Shadow of Defiance. The UES Defiance cut through the darkness of deep space, its obsidian hull absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the command deck, her weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. 20 years of military service had etched lines around her eyes, but they remained sharp and alert, scanning the tactical overview of the border region. "Status report, Commander Walsh," she ordered, her voice carrying that distinctive calm that veterans develop after surviving too many battles. Commander David Walsh looked up from his station. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining position at the edge of the Arcturus system, just outside Cylon territory. Long-range scanners are clear of any immediate threats." Reyes nodded. The Defiance represented humanity's most advanced warship, the culmination of decades of technological innovation. Since first contact with alien civilizations, its experimental quantum displacement drive and adaptive shield matrix had never been tested in actual combat, but Earth's military command was increasingly concerned about the aggressive posturing of both the Cylon Empire and the Morrigan Confederation. For centuries, these two powers had been locked in their own bitter rivalry, their vast territories pressing against human space from opposite sides. "Lieutenant Kaya, any unusual communications traffic?" Reyes asked, turning to her intelligence officer. Lieutenant Nadia Kaya, her fingers dancing across multiple interfaces, frowned slightly. "There's something odd, Captain. I'm detecting encrypted transmissions between Cylon and Morrigan command frequencies. That's unprecedented." A chill ran down Reyes' spine. That Cylon, with their crystalline exoskeletons and hive mind structure, had never shown any inclination to cooperate with the individualistic predatory Morrigans. Their philosophical differences had kept them at war for generations. "Can you decode any of it?" she asked. "Working on it," Kaya replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Their encryption is sophisticated, but I'm picking up recurring phrases: joint operation, human containment, and something about a demonstration of force." Chief Engineer Marcus Chen entered the bridge, datapad in hand. The short, stocky man had spent the last 3 months retrofitting the Defiance with experimental systems, often working through his sleep cycles. "Captain," he said, "the quantum displacement drive diagnostics are complete. It's stable, but I strongly advise against using it except in absolute emergencies. The theoretical models only account for maybe 60% of the variables." Reyes was about to respond when the sensor officer's urgent voice cut through the conversation. "Captain, multiple contacts emerging from slipped space 50,000 kilometers ahead. Configuration unknown. On screen," Reyes ordered. The main view screen shifted to show a section of space where reality itself seemed to distort. From these ripples emerged ships, dozens of them. On the left, the angular, crystalline forms of Cylon vessels glinted with internal light. On the right, the predatory, organic curves of Morrigan warships pulsed with bioluminescence. "That's impossible," Walsh whispered. "The Cylon and Morrigans working together." Lieutenant Kaya's voice was tight with tension. "Captain, I've partially decoded their communications. This is a joint fleet assembled to," she swallowed hard, "to demonstrate the futility of human resistance. They're planning to attack Earth's colonies in a coordinated strike." Silence fell over the bridge as the implication settled in. Two technologically superior empires had somehow overcome centuries of mutual hatred to unite against humanity. "They haven't detected us yet," the sensor officer reported. "Our stealth systems are holding." Reyes made a swift decision. "Gather all the intelligence you can. Record everything. We need to warn Earth Command." For nearly an hour, the Defiance observed silently as the alien fleet conducted what appeared to be a coordinated battle drill. The fluid movements of ships that had been bitter enemies just months before sent a chill through the crew. "Captain," Walsh said quietly, "based on their numbers and armament, Earth's defense fleet wouldn't stand a chance." Reyes knew he was right. Even with humanity's recent technological advances, they were outnumbered and outgunned. Prepare a secure data package with everything we've observed. Lieutenant Kea, plot the fastest course back to Earth space. Course plotted, Captain. Kaya confirmed moments later. Execute. The Defiance began its careful withdrawal, but they had barely traveled for 15 minutes when the tactical officer's alarmed voice cut through the tense silence. Multiple vessels breaking formation and accelerating in our direction. They've spotted us, Walsh confirmed, his face grim. The first energy blast flashed past the ship's port side, a warning shot. The second struck the Defiance directly, causing the entire vessel to shudder. Shields at 87%, reported the tactical officer. 8 X-Island destroyers and 4 Morrigan hunters in pursuit. They're hailing us. Ignore it, Rise ordered. Maximum acceleration. The Defiance surged forward, pushing its conventional drives to their limits, but the pursuing ships were gaining. They're coordinating their attacks, Walsh warned as another blast hit them. Shields down to 63%. Reyes gripped the arms of her command chair. The data they carried had to reach Earth. The alternative was unthinkable. Chief Chen, she called over the comm. I need the quantum displacement drive. Chen's voice came back immediately, tense with concern. Captain, I strongly advise against it. The calibrations aren't complete. We could end up anywhere or nowhere. Another hit rocked the ship. Shields at 41%, came the report. Weapon systems are charging, but we're outgunned. We don't have a choice, Chief, Rise replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. Prepare the drive. As Chen worked frantically in engineering, Rise addressed her bridge crew. We've discovered something our enemies never wanted us to know. Their alliance changes everything. If we don't get this information back to Earth, billions of lives could be lost. Quantum displacement drive ready, Chen's voice announced. But Captain, I can only guarantee one jump. All crew, brace for displacement, Rise ordered. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself appeared to bend. Stars streaked into lines of light, and a high-pitched whine filled the ship. Every crew member felt as if their bodies were simultaneously being compressed and stretched. When the world snapped back into focus, the enemy ships were gone. Status report. Rise called out, fighting a wave of nausea. We've jumped approximately 2.3 light years, Walsh reported, checking his instruments. No sign of pursuit. The momentary relief was cut short by Chen's voice over the comm. Captain, we have a problem. The communications array is completely fried. The quantum field affected our systems more than the simulations predicted. How long to repair? Rise asked. With the parts we have on board, weeks, maybe months. Reyes moved to the center of the bridge, her face illuminated by the glow of the tactical display. The situation was clear. They had discovered a massive threat to humanity, but couldn't warn anyone about it. Options, she asked her officers. Walsh spoke first. We could try to reach the nearest human outpost for repairs. That would take too long, Kaya countered. By then, the invasion could already be underway. Rey stood silent for a long moment, weighing her choices. Regulations dictated they should return to Earth or the nearest base for repairs. But her instincts told her something else. If we can't warn Earth, she finally said, then we'll have to disrupt this invasion ourselves. The bridge crew stared at her in shock. Captain, Walsh questioned, we're one ship against 2 empires. Rey's eyes hardened with resolve. One ship they don't expect. One ship with technology they've never encountered before. She looked around at her crew. We can't match their numbers, but we can create chaos. We can buy Earth time. She moved to the tactical display and pointed at the map of enemy territory. Set course for the X-Island forward staging area. If we can't bring the warning to Earth, we'll bring the fight to them. As the Defiance turned and slipped back toward enemy territory, Rise knew she was breaking every rule in the manual. But with humanity's survival at stake, conventional rules no longer applied. One human warship against two vast alien empires. The odds were impossible. But sometimes, impossible odds were exactly what humans did best. Echoes of humanity. 7 days after entering silent territory, the UES Defiance drifted silently through an asteroid field, its external systems running on minimal power. Captain Reyes and her senior officers gathered around the holographic display in the ship's tactical room, studying the rotating image of a massive space station. "This is the Nexus Prime," Lieutenant Kea explained, highlighting sections of the structure. "It's the primary supply depot for the Joint Fleet. According to the data we've gathered, it houses enough fuel, ammunition, and provisions to support their invasion force for months." Commander Walsh studied the rotating hologram with a tactical eye. The defense systems are impressive. Automated weapon platforms, patrol ships, and sensor arrays that can detect the slightest energy signature. "Which is why we won't be using energy weapons," Ray said, her tone decisive. "Chief Chen, what's the status of the kinetic projectiles?" Chen brought up schematics on a secondary display. "The railguns are fully operational, Captain. We've modified the warheads with the resonance disruptors as you requested. They'll be invisible to standard sensors until impact." Reyes nodded, examining the patrol patterns of the enemy ships. After a week of ghosting through enemy territory, stealing data through passive sensors, and occasionally intercepting communications, they had accumulated enough intelligence to plan their first strike. "Here's the plan," she said, highlighting a section of the station. "We'll approach using the asteroid field as cover. Power down all non-essential systems and drift to this position. Once in range, we'll launch a full spread of kinetic projectiles at their main reactor and fuel reserves, then immediately jump to these coordinates using conventional drives. The chaos should buy us enough time to escape." Walsh nodded. "And hopefully," Reyes added, "it will force them to delay their invasion plans." 12 hours later, the Defiance slowly drifted toward its firing position, external systems powered down to avoid detection. On the bridge, the crew operated in near darkness, illuminated only by the dim glow of essential displays. "We're in position, Captain," Walsh reported quietly. Reyes took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine whether their desperate gambit had any chance of success. Tactical, prepare kinetic projectiles. Target their main reactor and fuel reserves. "Projectiles ready," came the response. "Fire." Silently, a dozen railgun projectiles accelerated from the Defiance's forward launchers, streaking toward the Nexus Prime. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the first impact. A brilliant flash of light erupted from the station's lower section, followed by a chain reaction as the specialized warheads detonated, each amplifying the destruction of the last. "Direct hits," the tactical officer reported. "Their reactor containment field is failing." On the view screen, secondary explosions blossomed across the station as fuel reserves ignited. Alarms began blaring throughout the enemy facility, and patrol ships scrambled in confusion. "Power up engines," Reyes ordered. "Prepare for immediate withdrawal." The Defiance's engines flared to life, and the ship accelerated away from the destruction it had unleashed. For a brief moment, it seemed they would make a clean escape. Then the sensor officer's voice cut through the momentary victory. "Captain, we have multiple contacts approaching rapidly from Sector 4. Configuration matches Morrigan battle cruisers." Reyes' expression remained calm, though her mind raced. How did they respond so quickly? "Unknown, Captain," Kaya replied, studying the sensor data. "But the lead vessel, it's massive. Nearly twice the size of a standard Morrigan cruiser." The view screen shifted to show a massive vessel unlike any they had encountered before. It combined Morrigan bioorganic design with crystalline elements reminiscent of Thailand technology. "They've been sharing more than just battle plans," Walsh observed grimly. The alien vessel fired, and a beam of energy unlike anything they had seen before sliced through space toward them. "Evasive maneuvers," Reyes shouted. The Defiance banked hard, but the edge of the beam caught their port side. The ship shuddered violently, and warning lights flashed across every console. Shields down to 28% from a single hit, the tactical officer reported, unable to keep the shock from his voice. "Return fire, all weapons," Rise ordered. The Defiance unleashed everything in its conventional arsenal, but the energy weapons seemed to dissipate against the alien flagship's shields, while physical projectiles were intercepted by point defense systems. "No apparent damage to the enemy vessel," came the report. Another hit rocked the ship, sending several crew members sprawling. "Shields critical. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Emergency bulkheads engage." Rise knew they couldn't win this fight through conventional means. "Chief Chen, what's the status of the Sunforge?" Chen's voice came through the comm, tense but determined. "The prototype is operational, Captain, but completely untested. The power requirements will leave us vulnerable." "We're already vulnerable," Rise replied. "Prepare the Sunforge. All power to forward shields." The Sunforge was the Defiance's most closely guarded secret, a weapon system designed to temporarily create a microscopic artificial star and then collapse it, directing the resulting energy burst at a target. In theory, it could penetrate any known shielding technology, but the power requirements were enormous, and the consequences of failure catastrophic. "Sunforge charging," Chen reported. 30 seconds to firing capacity. The Morrigan flagship fired again, the beam striking the Defiance's reinforced forward shields. The entire ship groaned under the strain. "Shields failing," the tactical officer shouted. 10 seconds to complete failure. "Sunforge at 90%, Chen called out. 5 more seconds. Rise gripped her command chair, her knuckles white. "Hold position. Focus all remaining power on forward shields." The seconds stretched into eternity as the Defiance trembled under the assault. "Sunforge ready," Chen finally announced. "Fire," Rise commanded. For a brief moment, a point of brilliant light, brighter than any star, formed at the tip of the Defiance's forward array. The light collapsed in on itself, and then erupted outward in a focused beam that struck the Morrigan flagship directly at its center. The effect was immediate and devastating. The beam punched through the alien vessel's advanced shields as if they weren't there, cutting a clean path through its central section. Systems overloaded, secondary explosions rippled along its length, and the massive ship began to break apart. But the victory came at a cost. The Defiance's systems flickered and died as the power drain from the Sunforge left them defenseless. "All power gone," Chen reported, his voice barely audible through the failing comm system. "Emergency systems only. We're dead in space, Captain." On the view screen, they could see more enemy vessels approaching. Without power, without shields, they had no defense. "It was worth it," Rise said quietly. "We've shown them humanity won't fall without a fight." As the enemy ships surrounded them, preparing to fire, space itself seemed to ripple behind the alien vessels. From these distortions emerged a sight that made the entire bridge crew gasp. Earth ships. Dozens of them, led by the UES Valiant, Earth's second prototype vessel. "This is Admiral Zhang of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a voice over the emergency channel. "Stand down and prepare to be boarded, or be destroyed." The enemy vessels, caught by surprise and with their flagship destroyed, scattered in confusion. As Earth Marines secured the Defiance and engineering teams began emergency repairs, Admiral Zhang met Rise on the damaged bridge. "How did you find us?" Rise asked, still stunned by their last-minute rescue. Zhang smiled. "When you disappeared, Command feared the worst. But then reports started coming in about attacks on enemy supply lines, a ghost ship striking and vanishing. We traced the pattern and gambled you'd target something significant. The communications array was destroyed," Rise explained. "We couldn't warn you about." "The Alliance," Zhang finished for her. "We know. Your executive officer was smarter than you give him credit for." Rise turned to look at Walsh, who smiled slightly. I modified one of our probe drones, he explained. Stripped it down to basics and loaded it with the data we collected. Launched it toward Earth space just before our first attack. Slow, but eventually it reached a monitoring station. Your actions gave us time to prepare, John continued. The Sunforge data we just collected will help us outfit the rest of the fleet. He looked at the tactical display showing the retreating enemy ships. The Thailand-Morrigan alliance thought they could crush humanity in one swift strike. Instead, you've shown them what one human ship can do. As repair crews worked to restore the Defiance's systems, Reyes stood at the viewport, watching Earth ships secure the area. Against impossible odds, they had survived. More than that, they had changed the equation. What had begun as a desperate last stand had become the spark for humanity's resurgence. One human warship had brought chaos to two empires, and in doing so, might have saved their entire species. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was something perhaps more important: hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all.